always do better than necessary. This was the motto that George Edward Piaget lived by in 1874 when he opened up his workshop in La Côte-Offee, Switzerland. And I'm pretty sure I butchered that pronunciation. But this motto is still present in the watches that I'll be discussing today. Let's talk Piaget. I hadn't really paid attention to Piaget all this time, but there was something that caught my attention after watching some content, and that was that this brand is all about culture. Not mainstream culture, but it has its own culture that doesn't get talked about as much. Seeing today's landscape in watch design and then looking back at Piaget's designs, there is some correlation in terms of how the art of design was so well preserved and presented in their watches even back in the day. Like what comes after your dive watch trends and your integrated bracelet watch trends, we're seeing the comeback of case designs and case materials and stone dials. All of those traits were something that Piaget was at the helm of. Piaget is not just a jewelry brand. They're also a proper watch brand manufacturing incredibly high-tech movements in-house. I got hands-on with their 2025 novelties at Watches and Wonders this year, and there's one thing I noticed. It's that their speciality is in artistic creations with a technical spirit. Art and engineering. Function follows form instead of the other way around that we see in most modern watches nowadays. The main focus of Piaget is the design, and the technical part supports that design. That's ingrained in their DNA. Look at the Andy Warhol collection. It's all about the case architecture, the stepped case, and then recognizable case designs with unusual dials, stone dials, something that has gained traction only in last year. But Piaget had been doing it decades ago when this wasn't the norm. You have the Piaget 79, which is all about sculptural design. This is the definition of an integrated design, where the integration doesn't just end at the watch head, but it literally goes through into the dial. The movement is fantastic, but the movement doesn't take priority. The actual design is the main selling point here. And then you have the Piaget Polo, something modern, something everyday, something commercial. It's not just a gateway into the brand, but also a testing ground for new complications, for new types of finishings. But today we're talking about the Altiplano, and I think it's about time that we paid attention to this collection, especially from a dress watch perspective. So I have two Altiplanos here on the table. One is the more classic Altiplano Origin, and the other is a bit more technical with this skeletonized layout in this Altiplano Ultimate Automatic Watch. First, looking at the Origin, we have a 40mm white gold case with a thickness of just 6.36mm, 30 meters of Waterston sapphire crystal on both the front and back, and this beautiful white dial. A lot of times when we look at these simple dress watches, talking about the Calatravas, sometimes the minimalism in those watches can feel I don't want to say lazy, but it can translate as lazy. People, they want something more on the design side, especially when they're paying luxury prices. And I feel like this design does that perfectly. Just looking at the case profile and the lugs and how everything is not just well finished, but also well made and well structured. It's done beautifully. There's no side of this watch that looks boring. The ultra thin hands, the ultra thin markers, it's all creating this play of light and shadow and reflection. And I find that to be the main highlight of this watch. We talk about Grand Seiko in this way, and how there is that silent poetry, that passing of time that's appreciated. This watch has a similar level of magic to that. But turning the watch around, this is where things get even more interesting. We have the manufactured 1205P1 ultra thin automatic caliber that is just 3mm thick and features a small seconds hand and date function. Now, what allows this movement to be so thin while being automatic is that micro rotor. Just looking at the finishing, you have heat blued screws, you have beautiful perlage on the base plate, Geneva striping on the bridges. But even the layout, the movement architecture is so unique. All the edges have been mirror polished to perfection. And then we have the Altiplano Ultimate Automatic Watch, where the origin is a bit more subtle in its approach and its execution. It still looks like your traditional dress watch. The Ultimate speaks to a different crowd. It definitely has a more of a watch connoisseurs or watch geeks in layman terms appeal to it. When this first came out, this broke the world record for being the thinnest automatic watch on the market. Of course, that record has later been broken, but I don't see the visual appeal in the most ultra thin watches. But I personally feel that Piaget's Altiplano, that's the peak of ultra thin watches that still have that traditional look and finish to it. I don't want to wear a credit card on my wrist. This comes in a 41mm 18 karat white gold case with 90 brilliant cut diamonds on the bezel. Now you can find a version without the diamonds. That's actually the one I wanted to film because I'm not a blingy guy, but this is the only one they had at the moment. But I like the fact that it doesn't take away from the highlight of the watch, which is the main dial layout and the movement. This features the legendary manufacturer 910p movement. Now, this movement has 48 hours of power reserve, 3 Hz of beat frequency, and a thickness of just 4.3 millimeters. And instead of a micro rotor winding system, this watch features a peripheral winding system, being one of the very few examples of a peripheral rotor. But man, just look at the finishing of this open work. All those inner angles, all of those bridges, the way everything has been done to perfection, it's just incredible. Now, this just has 20 meters of water resistance, but at this point, who's counting? It's not like we're gonna take this watch in the pool. I heard that when this watch was first made, there was some issue with the timekeeping. That was mainly because the crystal and the hands were so close to each other that it caused a static charge between the hands and the crystal. So they had to apply special treatment on the underside of the crystal. And this was something completely unexpected by the watchmakers at Piaget because, again, this was the first of its kind. There were no existing case studies or precedents to refer back to. Piaget is in a good position to take lead on this new trend of these odd-shaped architectural case designs and stone dials. But I feel like Piaget is not being as vocal, as aggressive as they should be. They very much deserve to be at the forefront because they were at the forefront of this design approach back in the 50s and then later in the 80s. For a lot of these designs, Piaget is the reference point. They are a much smaller brand than I thought, smaller than majority of other watch manufacturers that also produce jewelry. With Piaget producing just around 15,000 watches per year, compared to Cartier that produces close to 800,000 watches per year. If I was to describe a Piaget customer or who these watches appeal to, I would say somebody that just doesn't care about what anyone thinks. This isn't necessarily a watch enthusiast's brand. It's not something that will give you that street credit that certain hype brands give you in collector circles, which I just find moronic, to be honest, because watch collecting is so subjective. Why chase the same 5-10 brands when there's literally thousands of interesting brands that do things differently? If you're in the market for a luxury timepiece, a luxury dress watch, do have a look at these. You genuinely might be surprised. Let me know what you guys think about these watches and about Piaget as a watch brand. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.